Switching gears slightly, a host of new laws went into effect over the weekend, including comprehensive reforms to the state's criminal justice system. Joining us now to discuss those new laws is Caryn York, and she's the Executive Director of the Job Opportunities Task Force. And welcome. I know you've been here before. We've been following this issue for a long time now.
Yes.
Tell us about how this changes policy for things like, we were talking about parole, drug treatment, victim restitution, criminal record expungement.
Sure. So just very quickly, the Justice Reinvestment Act was a large package. It's a large omnibus bill that sought to really look at who are we locking up, why, and for how long. And so how can we reduce our prison population and then reinvest those cost savings back into recidivism programmatic efforts. And so that's where you'll find different provisions of the bill that seeks to eliminate certain mandatory minimums so that we're reducing the number of individuals that are actually sitting in our prisons. We're ensuring that we are providing safeguards and protections for victims so that they're able to benefit and they're able to feel some justice. But then also expungement. We know that once you interact with the criminal justice system, it leaves you with something called a criminal record. And in Maryland, as we've discussed before, there's something called the Maryland Judiciary Case Search. That's a free online database that allows anyone with internet access to access someone's criminal background information. And so a key component of the Justice Reinvestment Act will allow for a whole host of misdemeanor offenses, guilty convictions, to be eligible for expungement after a specified period of time.
Let's touch upon that a little bit, because in the past, what would happen is you have a charge, you might get hit with about 10 different charges for one incident, and then you'd have it on your record and you couldn't get rid of the 10 incidents. So now you can. Before, I think this was just recently, last year or the year before, you could get it expunged, but you had to pay $30 for each one. Now it's...
So, right, to be very clear, Maryland's expungement law is very scattered, it's very confusing, and at times it could be a very daunting process. And so over the years, you've correctly stated, the advocates have worked with policymakers to eliminate barriers to expungement, understanding the impact that a criminal record can have on your ability to seek employment, to secure employment and housing and critical services. And so in the past couple of years, we've seen efforts or laws that are now in effect that would allow for greater access to expungement of non-convictions, those offenses that did not result in a conviction. And so recently, we now see that for non-convictions, for certain non-convictions, you no longer have to pay a fee. And another barrier to expungement is the cost. It's $30 per case to pay. And so if you're someone who's seeking expungement as a way to be able to access wages or higher wages, and yet you have to pay for a number of expungements or charges at $30 a pop, that in and of itself is a barrier. And so there are a number of things that that took effect on October 1. So you have the misdemeanor convictions eligible under the Justice Reinvestment Act. That includes offenses such as drug possession and certain misdemeanor theft offenses, and assault in the second degree is eligible after 15 years. So the misdemeanor offenses are eligible 10 years after you've successfully completed your probation, parole, or whatever mandatory supervision. But for second degree assault and those second degree assault offenses that are domestically related, you would have to wait 15 years. And so there are a whole host of convictions that are eligible for expungement. And then you'll find that there are non-convictions that are those that are eligible for expungement. You no longer have to pay a fee for them.
We have less than a minute, but we want to talk about those. We're talking about things that say on your record, STET. What are some of the others?
So everything stays on your record until you actually apply for it to be expunged. So as of October 1st, you'll have more misdemeanor offenses that are eligible for expungement. Non-convictions, acquittals, dismissals, not guilties, STETs, and probation before judgments under certain conditions are eligible for expungement, and no fee is required. But in 2018, you'll find that there's going to be an effort to streamline the expungement law in the bills and to overhaul the Maryland expungement law so it's more clarified, people can understand it, and it's more accessible to those who need it.
And in addition to this, we're talking about possibly looking into this whole case judiciary search for other issues as well, not just criminal.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, it's interesting. Maryland is unique in that we're one of the few states in the nation that allows this free, unfettered access. And we're not just talking about criminal offenses. We're talking about civil offenses, traffic offenses, divorce, family law offenses. And so it really could be construed as an invasion of privacy. And so when you put that up against access to everything in a public court of law, it makes for a very interesting conversation.
All right. I'm sure we'll be talking about this much, much more in the future. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for
Thank
coming.
you.
And for more information on the new laws, you can go to mdcourts.gov/legalhelp/expungement.